Alrighty. Good afternoon again. My name is Rachel Wilbrack, and this is how to write a tech resume. This will give you some tips specifically about technical resumes, but also about resumes in general. So really briefly, just quickly about resumes in general, the one thing that you always want to keep in mind is what is the purpose? Thinking before you're writing on what's the purpose of this resume? Who is your intended reader? What message do you want to send? A resume that you are writing for a software engineering internship versus maybe a part-time job to make some extra money on the side that isn't related to your field may look different, right? So keeping in mind when you're writing a technical resume, how that might look different, what you want the person who's reading your resume to think or get from that are things that you want to keep in mind as you're writing and putting together your resume. So elements of resume, things you've probably seen before. Heading, that's your contact information, your name. In your case, maybe it's a GitHub. Highly recommend if you have a LinkedIn. If you don't, get a LinkedIn. But if you do have a LinkedIn, of course, put that link there as well. Maybe your address. Nowadays, people aren't going to mail you things. So if you decide to do like just a city and state, that's okay too. But of course, the important things, email, phone, that's how they're going to get a hold of you, right? Education, of course, is going to go on there. That's going to be the next thing after your heading. You'll have the University of Maryland first because that's where you are currently, and then any institutions of higher education that maybe you attended before. So if you have an associate's degree, I would definitely recommend putting that on there. Or if you transferred, if you haven't received a degree from that other institution, you don't have to list them. But in some cases, sometimes you want to show that you attended somewhere else and then came to Maryland. It can help to kind of fill out and explain your academic history. You're not going to have your high school, though, underneath education. Next thing for a technical resume, highly, highly, highly recommend having your skills. Your skills are really important. It gives them a chance to do a quick scan of your resume. If they're looking for specific languages or technologies or software, you having that skills section that has the technical skills, and in this case I say language, I mean foreign languages, but also obviously programming languages falls under technical skills. Listing those on your resume at the top is really important. Helps an employer do a quick scan, see that you have a specific technology or skill that they're looking for, and then they know to continue on into your resume to look to see where you might have used that skill before. So it's not enough to just list it in that skills section, but you definitely want to have that up at the top. The next, or basically what's going to kind of combine and really make up the whole rest of your resume is going to be your experience section or sections, depending on how you choose to format it. You might choose to do one section that is just all of your experience. You might choose to split it up into relevant experience and other experience, or maybe even give it a specific name, like programming experience and other experience. But this is where really the heart of what's going to go on your resume comes, right? So if you've had an internship, those are going to be on there. If you've had part-time jobs, if you've volunteered, if you've been part of a student organization, participated in a hackathon, class projects, side projects, all that good stuff is going to be in your experience section. And I will definitely come back to that in a moment, but this is just kind of your quick overview of the different sections of your resume. So education, I mentioned before. Obviously, University of Maryland, right at the top, you're going to want to list your degree. So Bachelor of Science, Computer Science, or Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, whichever you prefer, either is fine. And obviously, please fill in your major if you're something else. The only thing that I kind of say to avoid is make sure that you list your full degree. So don't just write bachelor's in computer science or say major computer science, list the actual name of the degree. You're working hard for your degree. So give it and yourself that full credit of listing out the full name. You're gonna have the name of the institution. So if you do have an associate's, like I mentioned before, just kind of swap this for whichever institution, whatever degree you received before the one you're currently working on. Now here, sometimes I see different things. Sometimes students will list, much like an experience, they might say when they started at Maryland to present. You don't want to do this. You actually want to just list when your expected graduation date is. that tells employers everything they need to know. If they see May 2021, they're going to know you're probably looking for a full-time job. If they see May 2022 or sometime later that, is obviously not this academic year, they're going to know you're probably looking for an internship. So that can be really helpful just to kind of give them that heads up. It also gives them an idea of when you're finishing, because just because you started in a certain date doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to end at a certain time. Sometimes people finish their degrees sooner, they take exactly that 4 years, or sometimes they take a little longer. So giving them that expected graduation date will let them know when to expect your interest in a full-time position. GPA, if it's above a 3.0, I highly recommend listing it. Not that you can't list it if it's less than that, but if it's above a 3.0, show it off. You worked hard for it. Let them know. Obviously, if you have an application where they require and need to know your GPA, it might be a spot in the application, but it might also just be an opportunity for you to put it on your resume for that employer. And then, of course, keep in mind when we're talking about education that you want to stand out from the crowd. There are a lot of people in your major, as I'm sure you've heard, so they've had a lot of the same classes and projects potentially. So just listing the names of classes you've been in doesn't necessarily make you stand out. If you want to show that you've gotten to a certain level and show that class, because if they see a certain class, they'll know that you've learned certain things, great, but know that your experience is going to mean a little bit more. So even taking one of those classes or projects and expanding on it and maybe using it in your experience section, which we'll talk about in a minute, will kind of help to show what you've learned and what you can do with your skills and with the programming languages and technologies that you've learned. Also remember that when they see Bachelor of Science in whatever major, computer science or otherwise, they're going to know, for instance, if you have Bachelor of Science in computer science at the top of your resume, you've probably taken a few computer science courses. So you don't necessarily need to list all of them. You might pick one that is more advanced or very related to the type of position that you're applying to, or maybe one that isn't offered at every institution, or maybe is a higher level, like more elective CS course, maybe not one that everybody takes, that kind of thing. All right, so experience. Basically, you want to be detailed but concise, right? You want to give them information but not be too long-winded. You want to use bullet points. This helps them scan and see your information and be able to see like what you've learned, what you did in that position. I see I'm going to jump because I actually did see this question in the chat. Should we list our GPA if we haven't completed our first semester at UMD? No. If you don't have a GPA here yet, you don't have one to list, so you can obviously leave it off. In your conversation with an employer, if you want to talk about GPA at high school, I mean, you could, but I would talk about maybe what you're learning and how you feel like you're doing in your current coursework, because that's going to be a little different. Someone also asked about honors program at the university. Absolutely. If you would like to list that in your education section, you can, or if you're in a program like College Park Scholars or Civicus or any of those things, Gemstone, absolutely, that can be in your education. If you have a minor, I didn't mention that. If you have a minor, obviously that can go there too. Thanks for those questions. All right, so back to experience. Strong action verbs. If you've written a resume before, you've seen this. Having those strong action verbs to really start off the bullet point is really helpful. In the last few days, I've been doing more resume reviews as we're getting closer to the fair. And I'm seeing occasionally things like helped or assisted or worked to start off the different bullet points. They just don't really say what you did. So it's not that they're wrong, but oftentimes if you look at that same bullet point, you can find the actual verb that you can start with. So to give a very easy example, help to plan an event. The skill that you're trying to promote there probably isn't that you helped, it's that you planned the event. So you could easily change that to planned the event, as a member of a team of whatever, or while helping this group or something. I understand sometimes you don't want to take full credit and say, I did this all by myself. And so you want to kind of put some context that you worked with other people, but then say what you did and what the skill is, and then kind of point out that maybe you were a member of a group when you do that. Also, if you're going to have something that simple, add some details. Don't just say you planned an event. But that was my simple example to kind of show how you can use stronger verbs. Quantify your experience, just to the point I was just making. Anytime that you can use number of maybe new members that you helped to bring into an organization, or money you saved a company, or a percentage of time or efficiency that you created, all good things. All right, someone asked another GPA question, so I'm going to bounce back to that for a moment. Came in with 30 plus credits, so technically a sophomore, great. Should I say that graduation year is 2023 instead of 2024? I would say whatever you expect, whenever you expect to graduate should be your expected graduation date. So if it just means you're taking an extra year, that's fine, or one less year, but I would just say whenever you expect to actually graduate, that's the year you should put. Alrighty, okay, so again, thinking when you're writing these bullet points, kind of like when I mentioned before, knowing who you're writing to and what kind of positions you're looking at. You want to think about would an outsider understand your experience? The same reason you might not list a whole bunch of technical experience if you were applying to a part-time job that didn't rely on that technical experience. You want to give them the information that's related that they would understand. So if that means explaining a little bit of what a project is, you can certainly do that, or using words they're going to know. Lots of times when applying to technical positions, they're going to know the technical lingo, but keeping in mind when it may be too specific, if you know that you worked on something, really niche or something like that. When running your bullet points, it's always nice to have it read like a list of accomplishments instead of just a job description. So rather than saying, I did this, I did this, I did this, again, coming back to like, if you helped a company be more efficient, if you did something that allowed them to do something else, if you were in a competition in your class and your program that you wrote, your code that you wrote got you first place in the class, that's an accomplishment. So anytime that you can turn it around and make it more than just like a list of tasks and actually say what you accomplished, reads a lot stronger in your bullet points on your resume. Someone says they're a first-year student. Can you put experience from high school, even if it's unrelated to CS, or should you only put, yeah, perfect. Yes, if you are a first-year student right now, you probably don't have any or very little experience here at Maryland. Obviously, your experience is going to be from high school. That's totally fine. Usually what we say, and I think this is even later in the slides, is that by the end of your sophomore year, beginning of junior year, is when you're going to take off this stuff from high school. It could also come off sooner. Like if you just get super involved and you have all this great experience in the next year and you want to push the high school stuff off at the end of your freshman year, totally fine. But definitely by the end of sophomore, beginning of junior is when you're going to definitely want to start to take that stuff off, have more recent, more relevant. And for any of these, for anyone's resume, whether you're a first year student or not, listing experience that is technical and non-technical is great. Part of the reason I mentioned earlier about having different sections, like maybe a relevant experience and other experience, means that in relevant experience, you could have your CS related experience listed from most recent at the top to further down, maybe later, maybe it was 3 years ago or something like that at the bottom. But then in your next section, you can do the same thing. So you could have like CS related experience and then maybe like part-time jobs, student organizations that have nothing to do with CS. When you look at the things that are unrelated to computer science or your technical field, you're going to look for what are those big overarching like transferable skills. So I sometimes hear, oh, I was just a server. Okay, so you're telling me that you can work as a member of a team, you can work in a fast-paced environment, attention to detail, and organization, if you can remember like people's orders and what table had what. And so when you're writing about those positions, you're not going to say in your bullet points, took customers' food, took them their bill, or, like took their order. You're going to kind of pull out the bigger overarching skills, like the ones that I just mentioned, teamwork, customer service, because those are skills that are going to be important in any job that you end up having in the future or now. So you can kind of use your CS skills at the top to show that you have the technical experience, and then use some of your other experiences to show that you have the other transferable skills that you can get from a lot of places. All right, so highlight positive impact. This is another way that you can show accomplishment. If you increase productivity, you've saved an organization money. Organizations like to be more productive and to save money. So if you have ways to show that, great. If you don't stress out, but they're examples. Don't just list a project. Oops, sorry. List your role on the project. So were you the leader? It's okay if you weren't, but if you were, make sure they know. If there were 10 others helping, again, this goes back to like saying, you know, if this is a project or a task that you did with a group of people, let them know. That can show your teamwork skills too. Ability to delegate, maybe if you were the leader. Be honest with your experience. If you were a cashier, say you were a cashier. There's no harm in that. Don't try to fluff the title and give it something funny like, you know, monetary manager something or other, right? Like once they figure out you were just a cashier, it'll kind of turn them off for one thing, and they'll probably be questioning it before that. But a lot of people, a lot of us have had part-time jobs, have had early jobs that had nothing to do with our careers. So we've all had them. We expect them. In some cases, it can help you. There will be employers that have had the same part-time job that you did and will relate to you because of that. I know one time when I was talking about this with the Associate Dean of CMNS, Dr. Inventino, I was telling him about early jobs and things like that. And he said anytime he sees a resume with Baskin-Robbins on it, that's something he talks about because that was one of his first early jobs. And so even if someone hasn't worked at the same place, if they were a lifeguard just like you were, or they were a server, like they can relate. They know how hard it is to do some of these jobs and how it can be crazy busy on certain nights. And that might even be a way that they connect to you and relate to you and know that you have certain skills because they've been in that same role before. So like I said before, have them for the transferable skills. Don't be embarrassed by them. Like obviously if they get pushed off for better experience, fine. But be honest and kind of show how you have those transferable skills. And in some cases, it could be a way that you relate to the person interviewing you or the person you're talking to at a career fair, whatever. All right. If you went above and beyond on a project, please list that, talk about it. Especially if it was a class project, if it was something where you took a class project and you did everything you were asked to do, then you went above and beyond and made it have extra features, or you add, even if you add things to it later, talk about those things. If you were in a group project and you were the one who wrote the paper, mention that. Like I said before, if you received the top ranking, make sure that you mention that. If you were in a position and because of your good work, you got promoted, or maybe you weren't even promoted. Maybe you were just the go-to person that they asked to train new hires. Put that, because if they're trusting you to train new hires, it means they like the way that you did the work and they trust the way that you will train other people. So think of those things as things that you can list too. Don't forget that you can include a lot of different types of work, not just things you were paid for. So if you volunteered and helped someone with something or an organization with something, absolutely that can count as experience. Leadership experience could be church, sport, like a sports team, a club, anything where you made an impact on an organization or showed a specific skill or experience are great things that can potentially go on your resume. Like I said, it doesn't all have to be technical experience. Fundraising could be another opportunity, large projects, events you've planned, if you've raised money, increased membership, all those things can be experience that potentially can go on your resume as well. So this is a brief example. I talked before about being detailed, but also concise. You know, some of you, many of you have probably lived on campus. Many of you, given the state of things right now, have not lived on campus, but you've probably at least heard of a resident assistant if you have not experienced one or had one yourself. Looking at the first one, we can probably agree, yes, they're responsible for residents in the hall, planned programs for residents. They might advise hall council in some cases. But hopefully we can all agree that the second one looks more impressive. It says the same thing, but gives more details. So this is the kind of thing that you want to do with your bullet points as you write them. Maybe they start out as the basic ones in the top, but then as you add details and kind of expand on them, they can look more impressive as you add those details to it. So keep that in mind, that you can have the same experience, but really write about it in very different ways on your resume. All right, so back to technical skills. Talked about that section that hopefully is right up underneath your education section. Think when you're writing your resume about all the technical programs, languages, software, skills that you feel comfortable using. Don't list something just because you heard of it or you maybe used it once for 10 minutes. Like, we're talking about things that you at least feel a little bit comfortable using. If there's a specific program or language that you've spent some significant amount of time using, like maybe you've had an internship the last 2 summers and you've used that language, or you've had, a part-time job or something where you've used something and it's been a significant amount of time, make sure that that's somehow noted, so they know that this isn't something that you learned last week, right? Something you feel comfortable. I mention all this because if it's on your resume, expect people to ask about it. It's fair game. That doesn't mean that if you're still learning a language, you can't put it on there. It just means that you might want to somehow signify that you're a beginner using that specific programming language. And like maybe which ones you feel you are more proficient in could be marked, or maybe you feel like you're more at an intermediate level. It helps to let employers know that. And then they just kind of know. It doesn't necessarily mean that if they see you're a beginner in something that will immediately disqualify you. It just kind of gives them a sense of where you're at. If you're looking for an internship, lots of times they know that you might still be learning these things and that they might have to do a little bit of teaching, and that's okay. Like I said, if it's on your resume, it's fair game. When you're listing these things in your technical skills section, don't think that that means you don't have to list it other places in your resume. Really, the best thing you can do is have it in the skills section, but then also when they go down into your experience, whether that's a class project, a side project, an internship, you then list a lot, if not all of those same skills in your bullet points and say how you use them specifically. And then back to whether you're saying you're a beginner, intermediate, really be careful about ever using expert or advanced at this point. It's not that they expect you to be expert or advanced, but if you put it, then they will expect it. And if they find that you don't live up to that, that rating, they might have been fine with where you were before, but now that you've kind of inflated that, they will wonder what else you're inflating. So if it's just a basic knowledge, beginner, proficient, intermediate, those are all good. Some experience, as you can see, just be really careful with using expert or advanced, because they might choose to test you on that, and you want to make sure that you can live up to it. If you can, great, put expert or advanced, but just keep that in mind. All right, so if you're someone who maybe still needs to get some experience, you're not super confident, I mean, we can all continue to get experience, right? But maybe you're still trying to get that first, more computer science related experience or more technical experience. Try to find ways potentially while you're applying to internships, maybe to volunteer for a position that's maybe similar to your interests or your passion for technology. Sometimes getting those volunteer opportunities early on can help you get the paid opportunities later. So maybe that's being the person in your student org to manage and update the website. I know it's not exactly the same as programming, but it can be a way to kind of start and get some of that experience that you can build on. I mentioned before that you can add work to a past project, or you can also start your own project. So whether that's taking a class project and making it better, making it more efficient, making it do more things, that can be a way to show initiative, as is starting your own project. If you don't have those yet and class projects are what you have, great, use that. And just kind of look for ways to add additional things. Choose jobs that are related to your field of interest. So maybe you're trying to find something, you haven't found it yet, but you heard that there's a position in the computer science department as a student assistant. And you're like, well, this is a way to make some money. It may not be doing exactly what you want, but being in that office, for instance, might be a way for you to get to know more professors. And maybe by getting to know more professors because they're coming in and out of that office, you find out some research they're working on, you get pulled into that. Or maybe they know of an alum that they can introduce you to help you find an internship. It's just kind of another way to network and get closer to your field, and hopefully kind of make those inroads to other things. Ooh, this is a great question. If you have a side project that is published online, should you put the URL with the description? I think that's a great idea. That way they can go and look at it. You know, if you have code in your GitHub, listing that at the top with your contact information again is another great idea. Someone also asked in the meantime, will there be a recording? Yes, there will be a recording. It'll be on the our YouTube page, the University Career Center's YouTube page in a few days. All right. So just briefly, if you haven't had the exact experience you want yet, please don't let that stop you. It takes some time. You know, we all heard that adage that you need experience to get experience, and that can be frustrating. But focus on classwork, leadership, volunteering, maybe different things that can help give you experience and get you a little closer to that experience that you're trying to get. If you list the GitHub and have a project on the GitHub, then is it a good idea to list the URL? And then, I mean, sure, yeah, you could still list, have the project in your GitHub and have a link to where it is online in the description. It would help them, if they're specifically interested in that project, it would help them zero in on it and go right to it. So absolutely, that's an option. Okay, this is just a sample. Sometimes if people haven't kind of started with their first resume yet, and they're trying to get some more experiences and they're talking about projects, sometimes they don't always know what listing a project on your resume could look like. So this is a sample. This is someone who maybe hasn't had their first internship yet. They've worked on campus as a student web developer, but they have a personal project and they have a couple class projects. This can be a way to show your skill set and what you can do with specific languages. It's just another way to potentially show experience. And I list this here as an example. This is also available on the University Career Center at CMNS website, and on the University Career Center's resume page too. Someone made a great reminder. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is absolutely correct. I should have said it myself. With GitHub, be careful with school projects. Keep it private or don't list the school project. Your intention may be to show your experience and your ability and what you can do with a school project by putting it on GitHub. But if someone who doesn't have that same intention goes and finds it on your public GitHub and then uses it to complete that same assignment, you could unwillingly, unfortunately, if it's found out, could be in trouble for academic dishonesty. Again, not your intention, of course, but even if someone else found it and used it, it could potentially cause you issues with student conduct, which nobody wants. So if you are going to put school projects on GitHub, just make sure that it is private so no one else can find it, because you wouldn't want to run into that issue. Thank you for that reminder. I should have said that myself. Absolutely right. All right, general resume tips for all resumes, just kind of basic. Sticking to, font sizes that are 10 to 12 point. You just don't want them to be too small that people have trouble reading them, and you also don't want them to be too big that it looks like you have a big font to hide the fact that you don't have a lot of experience. Same thing with margins. 1/2 inch if you're trying to cram more experience onto that resume. Maybe if you still have a little bit more to put on there, and you don't want to have too much white space at the bottom, maybe you do a whole inch margin, and that's top and bottom, left and right. You want to stick to one page. That doesn't mean you can't have a master resume that has everything on it. In fact, I would really encourage that. Have the master resume that has everything so you can go back and see what experiences you've had in the past and remember when you started them and how you wrote the bullet points. But you can always cut and paste to that one page that you're going to submit to specific positions. But exceptions to one pages, if you are applying to anything in the federal government, they want to see anything and everything, so it can be more than one page. If you're applying to graduate school, they're usually expecting more than one page. Not that you have to, but they're fine with seeing more than one page. Let me think here. If you've been out in the working world for 10 years, you probably have a more than one page resume. So those are kind of the exceptions. But typically, if you are currently an undergrad student or if you are just graduated, usually one page is enough. You're just going to pick the most important things to share. Mentioned earlier, don't list any high school things after your sophomore year in college, unless it is very relevant or very impressive. Yes, if you just started a part-time job, that can be on your resume. Absolutely. Just make sure you've started it. I know sometimes people have said, oh, I'm going to have an internship this summer. Can I put that on there? Wait until you actually start it, because you don't have anything to talk about yet. So yes, if you've just started it, part-time job can absolutely be on your resume. Stick to a clean and consistent format. There aren't too many like right and wrongs as far as like where to put the date or what font to use or whether to bold something or italicize it or leave it plain. Like basically it's just a matter of keeping it consistent. So if you always bold your title, always bold your title. Make sure it's the same throughout all the sections. If you list your dates on the right, they should always be on the right, that kind of thing. And then just avoid excessive white space. It's not that there's anything inherently wrong. It just typically tends to make your resume look like you don't have a lot of experience, like it's not very full. So if you can, that's where like maybe playing with the margin and making it 1 inch to kind of move things around, or thinking about things you can add to your resume that you weren't initially going to add. Could be ways to help with that white space. I should also mention, if you are going to have a resume that is more than one page, like let's say you're applying to graduate school, and so you're gonna have 2 pages, just make sure that second page has at least half a page filled on there. Like you don't want the second page to literally be 2 lines of information, because you could probably find a way to get that onto the one page. Someone asked about talking about their resume. At the end of this, I'm going to talk about when there are opportunities to have your resume reviewed before the fair. So hold on to that thought. And then someone said in a previous job, they have nothing with my current searching job fields. Do I need to list my previous work experience? You don't have to list previous work experience, but I guess it depends. Like if there's a skill that you can highlight from it, I would say list it and highlight it. If you have enough experience that is related to your job field that you can leave off maybe the most recent, that's fine, you can leave it off. But if there's a skill that you can specifically share, I think that'd be great. All right, so I'm not going to discuss the career fair in this session. Right after this at 6, there's How to Rock the CS Career Fair, and I'm going to talk about how the career fair is going to work at that. And I will also give you information about that in a minute when we talk about upcoming events. Great questions. All right, tips from employers. List non-class projects that you have worked on. This comes back to the idea that class projects are great, but if you have personal projects that you've done on your own, those are even better. They show that you've taken initiative. You're doing something that wasn't assigned to you. I've had a couple students with resume reviews in the last week that are like, oh, I just kind of did it on the side. I was just kind of playing around. I'm not going to list that. Like that's exactly what employers want to see. So please, 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 if you've done that, even if it's a smaller, easier project, please list it. Again, it's gonna show that you've taken some initiative to do something that wasn't assigned to you. It wasn't part of work. It wasn't a class. It reflects very well on you. I've heard a little bit of pushback on this, but for the most part, employers are not really interested in your hobbies. I sometimes see at the bottom of some resumes like interests or hobbies, and saying you like to travel or you like basketball is fine. But like if it's that or another line of your experience, always, always, always go with your experience. I have had at least one employer tell me that sometimes having your hobbies at the bottom gives them something to like talk about, in interviews, like small talk, but for the most part, employers are not really interested in that. I would say an exception is let's say your hobby is related to the type of work that you're going to do. Like if you really like to travel, and a lot of people do, and you want to put that as a hobby and you're applying to, Expedia, then yeah, that might be a related hobby, right? Because it shows that you have an interest in what their organization does. All right, tailor your resume to the company or position. For the most part, if you're applying to very similar types of positions, you won't have to do much of this. But if you've decided that you're going to apply to cybersecurity positions and then some positions that aren't, you might choose to list more cybersecurity experience on one resume or highlight specific skills on one on the other. So that might be when you decide to tailor it a little bit more, and then be concise. And then briefly, this quote from an employer: most students have worked on websites for student orgs, applications for departments on campus, tons of personal side projects for fun that are actually pretty neat. The number one thing that makes a student stand out to me is not what they did in the classroom, but how they applied what they learned outside the classroom. Again, it just goes back to showing that you've taken some initiative, right? And that you can take what you're learning in the class and using it. All right. This might be a very specific example, and hopefully you don't mind reading it, but you sent it to me, so I assume you don't. Someone does blacksmithing as a hobby. I think that's pretty cool, personally. Have built a majority of the equipment in the shop, and some chemicals required, very specific disposal for procedures. Would that go on a resume? Yeah, I think if you have something like that, I feel like blacksmithing would be the perfect thing to get someone to be like, tell me about that, right? Like that's something that, so I think maybe if you do have a hobby that's more unique, that might be one to put on there, especially if you can show building that equipment or putting together that hobby that might take more than just saying, I like to travel, right? Something that's like not just something everyone or most everyone likes to do. So yeah, I would think blacksmithing might be an exception to my listing hobbies rule. Well, not rule, but suggestion, I should say. I want to ask more questions about that now. Someone said, I've been told putting arts also helps. I had one employer remark to me, although I didn't get hired sorry, that my involvement with music was a huge plus. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes music, because it can show not just the artistic side, but the more technical side of music too, can be an interest. That's a great point. Thanks for sharing. All right, so takeaways in general, mentioned before, try not to make it just a listing of the job description. Think about ways that you can show your accomplishments or the impact that you've had on a company or an organization. Find ways to set yourself apart. Anything that you can do, when you're in a competitive environment, trying for a job, to make yourself seem more impressive, in a totally honest way, of course, is something that you want to do. Write bullet points such that the person who's reading can visualize what you're doing, using those strong action verbs that I mentioned before. Remember, there is a chance that your resume could be scanned, especially if this is a company that maybe has a lot of people vying for a spot. If this is an organization that's very competitive, then they're probably going to have a computer scan through your resume potentially before they have a person looking at it. So make sure, they should already be on there even if a person's going to look at it, but make sure certain programming languages, brand names, specific software technology, things that they're going to be looking for, things that are in that job description are also on your resume, because they're going to be looking for that. Even if you do get past the computer, the person that looks at your resume is going to be looking for those things. And then pop at the top, just the idea that I mentioned before. If you have different sections, let's say you just started a part-time job as a server, because we all need some money. And it's the most recent thing, but you don't necessarily want it to be at the top. That's where making those different sections can be helpful. So you can have your education, your skills, and then you can have related experience and other. So that way you can really pull out those things that you want them to see first in that big section. All right, so I mentioned I would talk about upcoming events. So after this, there is a link there if you haven't already gotten the Zoom link for that and want to join me again at 6. I'll talk about how to rock the CS Career Fair and how the virtual fair is going to be a little different, kind of what to expect. There will be drop-in career fair prep hours tomorrow and on Friday. There will not be any on Monday. Okay, so if you want help, whether that's a resume review or to ask further questions, please come tomorrow or Friday. I'll be honest, I have a feeling that Friday is going to be really busy. So if you want to wait less in the Zoom waiting room, please come tomorrow or come very early, maybe on Friday. That's just my warning. I'm not sure, but those are the 2 times that we have left. And then, of course, there's the employer tech resume reviews that computer science is doing. The department has organized those, and those are tomorrow evening. And the link is there for you if you want to sign up for that. They're organizing that. That is not me. I'll leave this a minute just in case anybody is looking at a link or trying to copy it down real quick. The one at 6 p.m. Yes, the How to Rock the Career Fair will also be recorded. It hopefully will be up in a day or 2. The problem with, obviously uploading it to YouTube can happen quickly. We try to edit the captions. So I would hope that it would be up tomorrow or Friday at the latest. For those of you that maybe want it sooner and want to make sure that they definitely get that, or even this, if you shoot me an email, and my email will be at the end of this, I can make sure that you get it. But you have to remind me. The employer, all right, someone asked about the employer tech resume reviews. My understanding is that you will sign up and that there will be a number of different employers, and my understanding is that they might put you into breakout rooms with them. I'm not sure because I'm not organizing it, but my understanding is that you will have, I think, a chance for at least 2 different employers to look at your resume. The resume review link says it wasn't shared with me. I don't know what to do about that. That is an event that computer science is doing. If you had trouble getting to the link for the employer tech resume reviews, hold on to the end and I'll see if I can figure that out. The recording will be uploaded to UMD Career Center's YouTube page. It's just UMD Career Center. All right, hold on about the form. We'll figure it out at the end. All right, so other events, if you haven't realized already, Computer Science Career and Internship Fair is Monday, 2 to 7. That is the date, that is the link that will take you to the computer science page. And there is a link to RSVP. I would recommend RSVPing and saying that you're going to attend. You have the opportunity to fill out your chat profile ahead of time. You can also upload your latest version of your resume. My understanding is that some employers might sign in ahead of time and can start looking at resumes ahead of time. So if yours is in there, it might give you a chance to get seen before some others. Then also there's the Fall Career and Internship Fair, which is open to all majors. The first day, the 22nd Tuesday, is just for STEM. So that'll be computer science, that'll be engineering, math, physics, biology, all those great things. Day 2 will be a mix of STEM and all majors, and then the last day, all majors. So there will definitely potentially be employers that are coming to the fall fair that are interested in you as well. So keep that in mind. The link that I gave is to our events calendar, so you can look by day and see which employers are coming each day if you're interested, and kind of have a heads up so you don't miss anybody, because there will be different employers each day. And then looking later into the semester, although not that much later, only a couple weeks, careers in data science and data analysis, that is a panel with employers. So if you are interested in working with data, potentially that would be a career panel you'd be interested in, and hearing from some of our panelists about their experience. And that's also on the events calendar if you want to find that later. All right, so this is my contact information as well as my GA. He is not on the video today. He's actually in class at the moment, but he's another resource. He's actually doing the hours tomorrow. So you saw the hours for drop-ins. He's doing tomorrow's hours. He's great. I've trained him well, I promise. And I am doing the Friday hours. Not that that should sway you one way or the other. I also have the links to the 2 fairs again. All right, so we'll get to the form in a second. Do we have any questions? Things that I can answer about technical resumes? All right. It was mentioned that we should tailor resumes towards specific employers, but what about for the career fair? That's a great question. Yeah, you're just going to have one resume for the career fair. You're not going to be able to tailor it. What I would say is list the experience that is going to be most relevant to most employers. So, in this case, if you are applying to some cybersecurity, some not, then maybe you just kind of have to intermingle them and not necessarily make it look all cybersecurity for those companies. Because my understanding, I think it's just one resume that you can upload. So you don't have to worry about tailoring it. But maybe when you go to apply for those organizations, you'll have the opportunity to tailor. Great question. This wasn't asked, but I'll mention it since it often goes hands in hand with resumes. You don't need a cover letter for the career fair. Someone's a first semester student. Should my high school resume? I would say take your high school resume and update it. Just make sure, unless it already falls in line with the things that I've mentioned, then yeah, that's fine. But obviously you're going to take off your high school name and you're going to put University of Maryland on there. But depending on how that high school resume looks, yes, you could use that. Great question. Do we need an objective statement? No. Frankly said, you don't need an objective. Employers usually don't read them. So unless you have a really fantastic objective, I wouldn't bother. And again, if it's down to an objective or another line of experience, I'm going to go for experience, and so are employers every time. My one caveat to that would be, let's say outside of this experience, let's say a family friend says, hey, give me your resume, I'll pass it around the company. Then maybe you want to write an objective on it because you have no idea who's going to see it. And you might want to give them some context into what type of position you're interested in. But for the most part, if you're applying to position Y, they're going to know the objective is to get position Y. So you don't need an objective. Sure, if you want a review of a cover letter, we can do that during a drop-in. That would be fine. Is this career fair so that we can apply for internships, jobs during it or after it? Okay, so if this is your first career fair, definitely, 10 minutes. All right, we're gonna wrap this up in like 2 minutes here. Come to the How to Rock the Career Fair session that I mentioned. I can go back to the link for people. We will talk more about the career fair. There will be jobs and internships that you can potentially apply for there. It is not the only way to find employment. All right, so you don't know what's up with the link. I am going to do that now really quickly and see if I can figure it out. If you didn't have a question about the link, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to see if I can get this link to work though, because we'll see. But like I said, this is not my event. So we're going to see what we can do. I need to switch over to the other Zoom, make sure it's ready to go. Oh, okay, great. I forgot that this did this. Okay, so basically you will be able to get in at 5 o'clock because it's a check-in period from 5 to 5:30. Sorry, I did not remember that. But yes, there'll be a check-in time for the employer. So at 5 o'clock tomorrow, you will be able to get in, fill out the form, and then you will be in the queue to have employers review your resume. All right, thanks everybody. Like I said, if you're interested, please feel free, come to the session in 9 minutes. But thanks so much for attending. If you didn't already, here is the link. Oh, that's not the link. I was gonna say fill out the kiosk real quick. So if you did not already do it, I'm gonna stick it in the chat real quick, but just let me know that you were here by going to the link that I just sent to one person and meant to send to everyone. Right, here we go. If you have a second, click that link. We'll type in 1234 really briefly, and then your UID number. I'll leave this up there for a second. Thanks for attending, everyone.